It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. You're currently driving. Sun's still up. This feels good.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is what it's all about.
Even though we are recording a little bit later than we normally do because of the press conferences, the introductory press conferences for the signings and trade of DK Metcalf, we still get the sun. So this whole time change thing, it's not so bad.
No, this is going pretty well.
The
waved to
big
Brooke
news.
Pryor of ESPN, who was going by in the window.
So, yeah, Brooke. The big news of the day, the only thing that I really care about, we are getting a Steelers skill position player wearing a single-digit number. DK Metcalf wearing number 4. That's all I need. I'm good. Alan, tell the people they can find you and let's get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm excited about it. Irrationally excited.
The first non-quarterback or specialist to wear 4 for the Steelers since Andy Tomasic in 1946. What do you know about it? What do you know about that?
What you just told me. That's what I know about that. So dust off those Kyle Allen jerseys. You'll be able to put
Poor
Metcalf
Kyle
over.
Allen, sitting there in free agency, checking his phone, I'm sure, like, waiting for a gig. Nah, Steelers just gave away your number. Sorry, Kyle. I mean, they gave away his job earlier in the day, so I guess he probably knew the writing was on the wall.
Let's start
How about that
there.
for a transition, huh?
Yeah, let's start there. Mason Rudolph coming back to the organization, which is something in itself, obviously, to talk about. But I think the trickle-down effect is obviously what's really the story here. Mason himself coming back to the organization, I think is very interesting. There were a lot of people that, said that he was slighted on his way out and, he would have no desire to come back to the organization when it was thrown out there yesterday or 2 days ago, reported that they had reached out about a reunion. I don't know. I mean, for Mason, good opportunity here coming back to Pittsburgh, in my opinion. Don't know what other opportunities were out there for him. I'm sure he would have gotten a job somewhere, but this is just like a prototypical backup quarterback. I think he's going to find himself in this league for a long time. But at the same time, Alan, this is kind of where we wanted to talk about with Mason. You can obviously give your thoughts on him as well. It gives him a nice little placeholder where they can just kind of wait out this Aaron Rodgers thing till the very end and they don't have to blink.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of things. Let's start with let's start with Mason the player. A backup quarterback, but one that is not declining in skill. I think a lot of sort of transition backup quarterbacks over the last few years in the league. The guys like Jacoby Brissett and Tyrod Taylor, they're kind of getting up there. I think those guys are not as attractive of options as they were recently. Marcus Mariota, maybe another one. But I think Rudolph, played okay 2 years ago in Pittsburgh. He didn't play great last year in Tennessee, but it wasn't awful. I think you know what you're going to get, and was well liked when he was here. And I think has the kind of personality that'll make a good backup quarterback. He's always just kind of let things roll off his back and not not take things personally. And I think he'll be a good fit. Second part of this is, let's assume that the Steelers are going to sign one of Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. Those are the two options that are kind of out there that seem plausible. The younger of those two options is 37 years old. Probably going to need to invest some significant resources in a backup quarterback, because the idea that one of those two guys is just going to take the reins, play a full season, he's never given up a snap. Man, I don't see it. I don't buy it. Didn't happen with Russ last year. Wouldn't expect it to happen for either of those guys next year. So you do need a good backup quarterback, and I think Mason Rudolph is that. And then the third part of it is, obviously, the Steelers don't have a quarterback yet, a starting quarterback yet, and they're in this standoff with Aaron Rodgers about him making a decision, and I think this gives them enough that they should not now feel that they need to do something stupid. If they don't like the price, they can walk away and say, you know what, we'll just play Mason. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out. Mason for $4 million is better than overpaying for someone we don't really want that badly. And I think that is a really solid move for Omar Khan in general. It would have been a good move signing Mason Rudolph earlier this week. It would have been a good move signing Mason Rudolph in June. But I think right now, especially, this is basically just like, stare at the sunset all you want, man. We'll be here when you get back. They're not going to be pressured into doing something they don't want to do.
Also, I mean, best supporting cast potentially that Mason's had. We just talked about the DK Metcalf acquisition. Obviously, to have DK Metcalf and George Pickens on the outside, I mean, we had a little bit of a breakout season last year from Calvin Austin. I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on, obviously Broderick taking a big leap and Troy stepping in and being the player that we think he can be. And there's going to be a lot of questions, I think, about the offensive line, especially early, and we'll see if they can answer that. But like the supporting cast could be as good as one that he's had here in Pittsburgh too. You mentioned like one of two in terms of the Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson thing. I'll be like, I don't think that Russell Wilson's in the cards for the Pittsburgh. Like, I think it's Aaron Rodgers signs here or Mason Rudolph is the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I don't really get the sense they have any interest at all in signing Russell Wilson, but I don't think we should rule it out either, because the sense I'm getting from Steelers people is that they're fairly confident that this is eventually going to go their way. And I don't, like, I don't know what happens if it doesn't, right? If Aaron, stops staring at the sunset and decides, you know what, I actually just want to go be a professional surfer and I'm done with quarterback. I don't know what the Steelers' next move would be. And so I don't think we should eliminate Russ, but it's pretty clear they really don't want him.
I think Russ is going to eliminate himself before Aaron makes a decision. That's my thing.
Which I think will be a good thing for the Steelers, because then literally the only two choices for Russ are play for the Steelers for what they want to pay you or go home. Like that will be it.
Mm-hmm. So Russ met with the Cleveland today, meets with the Giants tomorrow. That's what I'm expecting. I think he's going to land with the Giants. He's going to sign before Rodgers, and then Rodgers decides to come here and retire. I know people keep talking about the Vikings. I'm not going to like completely roll that out or whatever to the same way with like you said about the Russell Wilson thing, but like I'm not thinking that that's a realistic option. So I think it's going to be Pittsburgh to retirement.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not going to try to predict which of those he's going to pick, because predicting what Aaron Rodgers is going to do seems false.
I will say I agree about like the internal optimism that I'm getting in terms of this eventually happening. But the scary thing about that is it's like the same thing last year with Brandin Ayuk and the internal optimism they had in terms of acquiring him. So like, I agree. I don't want to I just think that's the route. It's either Aaron Rodgers decides to come play for the Steelers, or I don't know who they add, but I think it ultimately ends up being Mason Rudolph as the starter.
I mean, I think there are some like esoteric options out there. Like if they get into a situation where they don't feel like they have one, like can start maybe talk to the Falcons about a Kirk Cousins trade if he's willing to like redo his deal. Like how bad does he want out? You talk to the Packers about Malik Willis. There are things that could be done.
I guess my thinking is Aaron Rodgers the only guy out there that like undoubtedly becomes QB1 in front of Mason? Like anybody else that we're talking about, is there a competition that takes place?
I think both of those guys I named would be QB1 ahead of Mason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you have more to add in terms of that whole discussion? Obviously, want to talk about the.
Well, let's just very briefly talk about like the hilarity of Russ visiting the Browns today.
Oh,
as Kenny Pickett is having his introductory press conference. Like, just the funny, like the universe is hilarious. Like,
yep.
Like you could not have possibly planned. And then of course he's going to get asked, like, are you okay with competing with Russell Wilson? And of course he's going to say, yeah, I just want a chance to compete, which is like just objectively hilarious when the whole reason he's not in Pittsburgh was that he didn't want to compete in the first place last year. This is one of the funniest situations I can recall. There's video of Russell Wilson arriving at the facility while Kenny Pickett's in there talking to reporters. Like, he's like, what do I got to do to get away from this guy? Like,
I had to use it. I had to use the Simpsons meme where he's throwing out the door, and he's right back behind him afterwards. I said Kenny Pickett trying to get rid of Russell Wilson from his life, and that honestly is what it feels like. For the sake of that, I hope Russell Wilson signs in Cleveland. I just don't see it. I think he ends up going to the Giants.
Well, he left without a deal. Usually that's pretty telling.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're Jonathan Allen, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Saw that happen just this past week. But anyways, a couple more transactions to talk about just real quick before we get into the actual news of today with all the guys that were brought in talking to the media. Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller, two pieces of the wide receiver room from last year, both brought back. I kind of I know that they like Skoranek from a special team standpoint, obviously a really good blocker as well. Thought he was a good fit, like your ideal wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 to fill out a depth chart. Scotty Miller, a bit surprising to me that they would have interest in bringing him back, but what's your take on both those guys?
I thought Ben Skoranek was I was a little surprised it took this long to re-sign him because I thought he made so much sense. The special teams ability, he's a bigger blocker than most of the rest of their depth receivers are. Like, you know, Roman's a willing blocker, but he's small. Calvin is too small. Like, you know, to add somebody that can be that physical to the bottom part of the wide receiver depth chart, I think was important. Good special teamer, I think that's important. So yeah, I was a little surprised it even took this long. Scotty Miller, I guess I'm not totally shocked. He said, like, he's obviously seems to like playing for Arthur Smith, but I don't know how much of a role I see for him if the Steelers do what I think they're going to do and go sign another wide receiver. You know, because, like, okay, let's say it's one of those guys we talked about yesterday, Kupp or Cooper or Cooks, or, you know, one of those guys, Lockett. Where's the role for Scotty Miller then, right? You got the two big guys, you got your number 3, and then you got Calvin and Roman and Skoranek. Like, to me, what that makes Scotty Miller like wide receiver 7 and on the practice squad.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, yeah, one addition in free agency, obviously the draft, they could add a receiver there. Like, there's a lot of hurdles for Scotty Miller.
Think about that. Like, that number 3 could be Emeka Egbuka or Matthew Golden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of hurdles to clear here for Scotty Miller to make this roster, in my opinion. But at least for the time being,
although I will say, not to get totally sidetracked on the draft, which is not what we're talking about today, but the events of the last week have made me even more certain than ever that the first-round pick is a defensive tackle, almost 100%.
Yeah. You brought up defensive tackles, and there's actually quite a few people were like DMing me about your article and what you mentioned in it, because all of a sudden I got some people that are on board with Calais Campbell. So I don't have people that are all ageist DMing me, Alan.
Dude, the ageist Steelers fans are really bothering me. I don't know why. They hate old people. And maybe I'm a little sensitive about being 41 and like older than all of these players now. Maybe I'm internalizing, but like the Steelers fans are really aggressively against adding anyone like with a 3 next to their age. And I don't, if they're good, why does it matter? I don't get it. I ranted about this, partially about this this morning. And I think part of it is like, okay, Darius Slay, 34, Calais Campbell, 38, would be 1-year options. And what it comes from is, it's not that people don't understand that a player of that age can be good. It's that the people have lost so much faith in the Steelers' ability to do anything that they are afraid of them having to make another decision again in a year. Like, they want all their things to be long-term. Like, don't sign a 1-year corner, sign a 5-year corner. Well, if you get the same quality corner on 5 1-year deals or 1 5-year deal, it doesn't make any difference. But people are just so down on the Steelers, and so, I think, like, ridiculously down on the Steelers that they're afraid of having to go get another corner next year. They're all so operating in their fears. They want everything to be locked up for as long as possible. I'm like, which doesn't even make any sense, because if you think they're bad at identifying corners, they're just as likely to sign a bad corner to a 3-year deal than they are to misidentify the next corner the next time around. Like, it's not even sensical fear. It's just irrational fear.
Yeah. No, I mean, I fully agree. Obviously, I feel like we just had the same conversation when it comes to Cam Hayward last season. You know, when there was other conversations about wanting to extend him.
Like, nobody learned. Nobody learned.
And not saying like
saying
everybody's Cam Hayward. I had to
make you all look dumb about Cam Hayward last year, and I'm gonna have to do it again about Darius Slay. And boy, if they sign Calais Campbell, Smitty, Calais Campbell was, in terms of on tape last year, the best defensive lineman available in this class, and it is not even close. He was a better player for the Dolphins last year than Milton Williams was for the Eagles, than any of these guys, Sheldon Rankins, Grady, any of these guys. He was the best one. And people are going to go nuts if they sign him because he's 38.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear that's honestly maybe the ideal scenario for me. Add him and add somebody early in the draft at this point. I mean, that's 100% something I could get on board with.
And when you look at what the Steelers are trying to do with their defensive line, and they're trying to follow this Eagles blueprint, the Eagles don't play one guy 90% of the time. They come at you in waves. Okay, they have multiple first unit for the last 5 or 6 years of their careers. Fletcher Cox was backup, and so it's not a big. So sign a guy like Calais Campbell, pay him his money. He only made $2 million last year, by the way. I think he's underpaid significantly.
Yeah.
And not have that guy be in the starting lineup. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. $2 million. He only made $2 million last year. Curious to see what he gets this year then, because like you said, he was still pretty good. So is he going to be looking for a raise upon that? The exact same? I don't know. We'll see what the market looks like for Calais Campbell. He could certainly still be hanging around in the summer, as you mentioned, is often the case with aging defensive tackles. Let's talk about some of the guys.
He didn't sign until July last year.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously was a big part of yeah. But anyway, let's go dive into some of the guys that talked today. I believe Echols kicked off the day, right? He was the first one to speak today. What did we learn about Brandin Echols in terms of the way that he sees himself fitting in here and why he chose to sign here?
First of all, we learned Brandin Echols is a funny guy. I
was gonna say, just from looking at the highlights of it and stuff. Yeah.
Very engaging dude. Was having a good time. Seems like maybe not a joker, but just a jovial guy. And talked about his role. He said he feels like he is more comfortable as an outside receiver, but he just wants to compete to be a starter, which, writing on the wall, that's in the slot. Has obviously been very versatile. Is also a big special teamer. To me, I see this as the replacement for James Pierre, who also has slot versatility. And I don't know if he's going to be the starter in the slot, but I think you can look at the slot position and say, we got 3 guys between Echols and Beanie Bishop and Corey Trice that we can all try in there and see. I don't think there's a need for another slot corner now at this point. And now, if one falls to you in the draft or whatever, you get one. But I don't think they need to be shopping for a slot corner at this point. He's not great. Hasn't gone well when he's had to play a lot as an outside corner. I think I heard from some Jets people that they liked him better on the inside. Ooh, and I was on a Jets podcast yesterday that was a space. And I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers a little bit from that. Put that on the list. I want to get back to that.
Okay. All right.
But also about Echols, that's pretty much it. We talked about playing with Rodgers, which was good. He said he wasn't quite sure how to take his personality at first, but he really warmed up to him. Seemed like they had a good relationship, and said, would he like to play with him? And again, and he was like, yeah, hell yeah. Tell him to get his ass here, which that was pretty funny.
Yeah, as I say, just from the little bits and pieces that I was reading and clips that I saw, it certainly seemed like he had a personality, which it's good. You need guys like that that can bring the energy each day. It seems like he's probably the type to kind of be that, maybe like a DeMonte KZ type in terms of personality. Yeah,
I can see that totally. He said he has a thing where if he puts his hair on one side, don't talk to him that day. Where he's that's like angry Echols. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, which side did he specify which side it was?
He did, but I don't remember. Which is bad news for me. I better figure it out quick.
Yeah. All right. So moving on from Echols, Kenny G, as we will be referring to him on this show, and I assume that everybody in Pittsburgh will catch on to this. Kenneth Gainwell, the running back that was brought in, also seemed like he had a little bit of a personality. What did we learn about him?
Yeah, pretty soft-spoken guy. He is little, man. Just a small dude at the podium. But I loved his answer. Mike DeFabo from The Athletic asked a really good question about the Steelers following the Eagles' blueprint and building from the trenches out. He was like, man, I love offensive linemen. Like, I can't wait to go meet those dudes. And I thought that was pretty funny. Like a good, said like, yeah, that's what it's all about. Also talked a lot about his love for pass protection. He's been a third down back, and he thinks that he and Jalen Warren will like bond over that. Like he said, they don't know each other, but like he's like, my first impression of him is that's a dude who loves to pass protect, and I love to pass protect. So, backs on backers could be fun. That's a little dude, but I think he's going to bring a lot of energy there.
Oh, you know what I just thought about is backs on backers without a Landon Roberts. Man,
it is sad. It is sad. I know.
Wow.
Maybe we got to get a joint practice with the Raiders going. See get Mike T on.
There we go.
And I'll pitch it to him as like you want your running backs to get that smoke, right? Like you don't want to miss out on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's probably where they're going to miss him the most. Guy that was brought in to replace Landon Roberts, also speaking today, Malik Harrison coming over from the Ravens. Obviously, we knew Patrick Queen would be part of the conversation with him and a reason that he came over playing next to him and stuff like that. But what did he have to say?
I thought it was pretty funny that he said he talked to Patrick Queen before he signed the deal, and he said he was on his boat. Like I just picked like Patrick Queen fishing. They're like, "What do you want?" Oh yeah, cool. You're coming to Pittsburgh. Never mind. That's great. Awesome. But said that they have a good relationship. They came in the league together. Talked a lot about playing special teams. Said that like even back to his time at Ohio State, that was something that he was passionate about. Obviously going to be a core special teamer. And then said he can kind of play anywhere. Said he's played a little bit of edge, which I didn't really know. I don't really see that happening in Pittsburgh with the depth they have at edge, but it's interesting. I think he's more of a big inside linebacker. And also talked about the idea of going up against that Baltimore rushing offense with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and said, in practice, like, don't actually get to do it. Like, you don't get to hit them. And he's like, I'm looking forward to trying. Like, I want to see what it's like. So I thought that was a newsworthy quote. I'm sure the people in Baltimore will be aggregating that when we publish it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to seeing that. Look forward to seeing how he fits in and gets acclimated here. And I think he has I don't think people are going to hold it against him, but obviously he's got some pretty big shoes to fill in terms of the person that he's replacing as well, and Landon Roberts. So we'll see how he gets acclimated here.
I didn't like that move, but like don't hold that against Malik Harrison. He don't have nothing to do with that. Like you got to evaluate him on his own.
He called the Steelers and was like, "Hey, get rid of Landon Roberts right now, and I will sign there."
Yeah, right.
Darius Slay. We talked about the ageism already. Darius Slay, 34-year-old corner, coming over on a 1-year, $10 million, fully guaranteed deal. I've always liked Darius Slay. I talked about this. I actually just put out a post today about it. Like probably one of my favorite non-Steelers of all time. So it's really cool to see him becoming a Steeler, even if it is on the back end of his career, and was still playing at a high level just last season. So hopefully he's able to carry that over. But I was curious about how like his personality would shine through. What'd you take away from him speaking today?
Well, first of all, it is just Slay. No Darius.
Big play Slay. Yeah.
Just Slay. So.
Nick and I were talking about this in terms of the way that Mike Tomlin's going to talk about him. Like we can just see like he's going to be like, who he is, the Slaymaker. Like he's just going to come up with some different things to say about him during press conferences when talking about him. But anyways, yeah, just Slay.
Really well-spoken guy. I mean, obviously, if you listen to his podcast, you kind of knew this is like a well put together dude, very smart, very articulate. Said that his favorite part of his job is being a mentor. Said he took a lot of pride in the way that Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell took to things in Philadelphia last year. Says looking forward to working with Joey Porter Jr., Beanie Bishop, those guys in that room. Said he's really looking forward to playing with Minkah Fitzpatrick, which I think is something that people like forget. Like I know Steelers fans like a little down on Minkah because he didn't have the best year last year, but like that is a big draw to a free agent defensive back to be like, oh, you're gonna put me next to Minkah? All right, I'm gonna look pretty good then. Like that's a big deal to those guys, even if it's not a big deal to those of you who have been watching him and have maybe seen him a little bit better than he was at his most recent. But that's still definitely something. And then, of course, his relationship with Terrell Austin, who he said made me who I am today. I thought that was That's a pretty significant quote. Terrell Austin was his first DC with Detroit, said they've kept up over the years. Really looking forward to playing in his defense again, which is interesting because, very different scheme from what the Eagles run with Vic Fangio. But in terms of like what they ask the corners to do, not like it's not like he's going from a cover 2 team, like where it's just like Patrick Peterson was, where it's like, oh, totally different. It's going to be asked to do a lot of the same things, less quarters, more cover 3. But like other than that, and you play quarters and cover 3 pretty similarly anyway. So I think there's a lot to like about Slay. And he also said that he's friends with Patrick Peterson and Joe Hayden, and his mentor was Rod Woodson.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I understand a ton of success in Philly and obviously should have been there. But like, again, I'll say it, like, this seems like a guy that should have been here before at some point. I'm glad we're making that happen at the end of his career here.
This feels like a Deshaun Elliott, a Landon Roberts fit in terms of like Steelers Z-ness.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel the same way about the receiver they acquired, DK Metcalf, officially coming over? There's like a lot of people like DMing me, like, do you think this trade's not going to end up going through? Did something happen with it? Blah, blah, blah. But anyways, DK Metcalf trade does.
People are
official.
so paranoid about the Steelers that they couldn't feel good about the best. Right. They traded for the biggest trade acquisition in terms of like the ability of the player at this moment, the ask for the pick, the amount of money he's making in team history, spending $150 million, the largest contract to a new player in team history. And people are like, oh my God, it's not going to happen. I'm like, shut up. Yes, it is. Jesus.
It's paranoia, like you said.
I know. Like, it's just this, they're so afraid. Yes, DK Metcalf is a Steeler. You can relax now and enjoy your life again.
Not just DK Metcalf for a second, though. There was also some other late picks in it. The Steelers actually move up.
We knew that there was a pick swap, but the language as it was reported initially was kind of vague. Steelers send 233 in the 7th round to the Seahawks. They get a 6-rounder back. Move up 30 spots, 38 spots. So not nothing there also. And then I haven't seen the details of the 5-year deal, so we can't calculate the cap hit until I see that. But I mean, pretty much all we need to know about this. Also, DK Metcalf proposed to his girlfriend Normani this week, who he didn't tell anyone until like today. So we got the scoop on that, and talked about how Russ and Sierra actually set them up. Normani is also a singer. She was in a group called Fifth Harmony, if you've heard of it. If you're not, Google it.
I am a harmonizer.
You're less cool than me, which is bad. You should not. If I'm putting you on to music groups from the 2000s, you're washed. I'm sorry. That's all I got for you. So she was there with him, which was very cool. And seems like he said, I've had a great week, man. So he got engaged, signed a $150 million contract. What's not to love about being DK Metcalf right now?
Sounds like a good life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were thinking like, with this move happening, it was like automatic that Russ was coming back. But he even said like, he hasn't really talked to him in regards to this offseason at all, like in terms of where he was going to be playing or anything.
Yeah, no, he said he talked to Russ last year about Pittsburgh, and he said Russ said you would love it here. Like Russ almost kind of put the seed of Pittsburgh in there for him, but said, when he agreed to this trade, had no idea who the quarterback was going to be, didn't care, hasn't asked, isn't part of the process, hasn't talked to Russ about where he's playing this year, and just that he has the full faith of this organization to make the right decision, and he's looking forward to finding out like everybody else. Slay said the same thing, that he said, I have more faith in this organization than anyone. And I think that's another thing where like Steelers fans frustrated with the status quo are not feeling the same way about this team and this organization that the rest of the NFL is. These guys are excited to be here. They believe in the organization. They believe in Mike Tomlin. Kenny Gainwell, why'd you want to come to Pittsburgh? Mike Tomlin. Like, point blank, very first, that was all he said. So, they're still a draw. They're still a place people want to be. And they're a place that they're an organization, the front office that's really well respected and that people have faith in that they'll make the right decisions.
Well, there you go. From players that are coming in, and with all if you just listen to the fan base talk about the organization as opposed to players in the NFL talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, it's very different. It is very different. And these guys today talking about the organization certainly prove that.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to be frustrated. Just don't confuse your frustration with good, not great, with bad. I think that's the trap people fall into. Is like, it's okay to be frustrated at 10-7 again, but 10-7 is still good. And so and 10-7 repeatedly is very good. Hard to do, quite difficult. I might and so I think just
right. No, I mean I'm a fan. I fall into the same bucket in terms of the frustration level and stuff like that. But it's baffling to me that people think that this still isn't an organization that people view as like somewhere that people would want to play for because of the postseason failures.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And to hear guys come in and talk about the Lombardis and the case, and there's like a reverence there, and it's real. And so seems like a good group of guys. Excited to be working with them, and
All right. Cool. Look forward to hearing more stuff about them as we go through the process here. But Alan, until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders _PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is site's account. SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. Do you have the YouTube numbers for us so we can play our little game here? I'm indisposed. But
nice,
subscribe,
nice number here.
Hit that bell for notifications on the YouTube channel so that you don't miss an episode of Steelers Morning Rush, Steelers Afternoon Drive. All the interviews from today, which will be posted there in like 90-second chunks over the next couple days, but they'll all be there eventually because we got to follow the stupid NFL rules. But they'll be there. Hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss them.
I will give you a layup to pay homage if you so choose with the number that we are currently at, because we are currently at 15,200 and Larry Foote.
15,200 and Larry Foote, which is also 15,200 and Ryan Shazier, who came up today. Malik Harrison said that's one of the guys he looked up to growing up in Columbus, following in Shazier's footsteps at Ohio State, now following with the Steelers. I know where you were going with that. I did not go where you were going with that, but
shout out to E-Rob one last. Well, I shouldn't say one last time. We will be talking about E-Rob.
He did say he would come back on the podcast.
Yeah.
So.
In the future, but this is like the third time that we've been on a 50 when we've done this. So, but yeah, there we go. Drop your favorite number 50 in Steelers history in the comments, along with a question for a future episode, a topic for a future episode. If you're listening somewhere else, whether it's Apple, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, you can find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.